Okay, what do we have here? Either we've got a canal on Mars, or we've got a frost pattern on a window, or we've got a tree, or we've got a pattern of like lung branching or something. What do we have? We have a bifurcating system. And the characteristic of a bifurcating system is it is scale-free. On a certain level, if this is what a drainage line looks, the Nile emptying out into sort of the Mediterranean as seen by a satellite, and if you're looking at the dendrites on one single neuron with an appropriate microscope, if you look at it formally in terms of the branching pattern, you can't tell which one you are looking at. The complexity of the branching is scale-free. So it turns out some of the most important things we have in our bodies are bifurcating systems. All the branch points on neurons are bifurcating. And maybe what we'll post is some amazing pictures of bifurcating dendritic trees on neurons, and they're called dendritic trees because they look just like trees. And when they get more complex for some reason, you are said to have increased their arborization, using terms straight out of treeology. So neuronal complexity in terms of its branch points. Look at the circulatory system, and it's the same thing as a bifurcating system. You've got your descending aorta, which is ascending here, and then it splits into two and splits into two and splits in, and it is a tree bifurcating into a whole bunch of little capillaries at the end. You look at the pulmonary system, and it is the exact same bifurcation coming down your trachea, which splits into two bronchos and then splits into bronchioles or whatever, and it's the same exact thing. So you've got this theme of bifurcating systems throughout living systems in the body, and notice the difference in scale. If this is blood vessels, we are talking about millions of cells making up the blood vessel walls, but here we are seeing potentially the exact same complexity of branching in a neuron that's a single cell, independent of scale. You can have just as complex branching coming off of a single neuron as the branching you're getting in a gazillion different capillaries in the tree of projections it comes from, the same exact degree of complexity. So now we come to the problem here, which is, so how does the body code for that? How does the body give out the instructions as to how to make a bifurcating system? And this is where you immediately run into trouble. What's a world we're sort of oriented to? In a purely reductive world, there is some sort of set of rules telling an aorta that's growing like this that there is some gene or genes which specify the point where this bifurcates. And this bifurcates and it's 2 inches in diameter or something. Meanwhile, at a later point where it's about an inch in diameter, it bifurcates. It's a different gene or set of genes that specifies this bifurcation. And another type of gene that specifies the next one. And those are obviously going to be totally different sorts of genes than specifying the same branching patterns in a neuron. This is one cell. Here you're having to specify thousands of cells, and at what point do they stop adhering in a certain way, so you can make a split there. And you look at this, and suddenly you got the same problem, which is there's not enough neurons that exist, there's not enough genes in the genome that exist to be able to code this way. You can't code for bifurcating systems in a living organism that covers completely different scales from one cell up to zillions of cells. You can't code for it in a point-for-point reductive way where the points down at the bottom, the component parts, are individual genes. You can't code for recognizing your grandmother with simple reductive component parts of neurons. You can't code for the bifurcating systems in the body because these will bifurcate out to millions of capillaries, and there's only 20,000 genes. The reductive approach breaks down here as well. Reductive point-for-point approaches break down when you get to the cortex trying to do something fancy like recognizing faces instead of dots, and it breaks down when you look at bifurcating systems that have to have have a plan to split and then split and then split 1,000,000 times to get all the capillaries out there. You can't code for it with a reductive approach. If there's not enough neurons, there's not enough genes.